Welcome to Industry Insights with Route Consultant, your front row seat to the fast-moving world of logistics and beyond. Each week, we bring you game-changing insights, real-world strategies, and fresh perspectives to fuel smarter investments and build stronger businesses. Join us as we sit down with expert guests to explore emerging trends and pressing topics across a wide range of industries. This is Industry Insights. Welcome to Industry Insights. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the biggest expenses for any logistics industry, and that's fuel. Whether you're driving FedEx routes, bread distribution, waste management, or anything in between, this is going to be one of the biggest expenses that can really make or break your margins. And I'm joined by Annalee Cate, the CEO of the RCPA Fuel Card. Hello, Annalee.
Hello, Josh. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, and I know we're going to be talking about a bunch today, from everything to managing your fuel strategy properly, but also to hearing some of the challenges and mistakes that we've seen other people make in this space so that hopefully listeners can avoid some of those in the future. So it is a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to the studio. And I think just as the easiest way to get started is if you just want to give a little bit of background for people who haven't met you or who haven't heard of the RCPA Fuel Card. You know, what is it? How did you guys get started in this space?
Absolutely. So I started in this space originally, actually working with Route Consultant.
Yeah.
So some of you may recognize me from my time. I've spent almost the last decade actually managing as the CEO for Route Consultant. But in the last few years, I have really transitioned from that and have now been really focused on the RCPA Fuel Card program. And it's been a really fun change of pace and just looking at this small piece of what we as operators spend a lot of time, energy, and money on, and seeing, so many ways that area isn't as efficient as it could be.
Yeah.
And so that's really where the RCPA Fuel Card program was born, was just out of both operationally in my business, in the businesses that the rest of the patent platform operated, how we saw so much fraud, theft, abuse, inefficiency, just so many different places that we were losing money and time, and then looking at a way that we thought we could do that better. And so that's really where it started in so many ways. And it's also just crazy because it's one of the few places where we as operators in all of these different industries are collectively purchasing so much fuel, but we're paying retail price at the pump the same way that, I would if I were just going to fill up my car. And that just seems like such a crazy scenario in my mind.
Yeah, and I know that was one of the big pain points early on is when you're just thinking about, I know that I am only one person buying fuel, but there are so many FedEx contractors, there's so many vehicles on the road. And I know early on for when we were thinking back to when you were first designing the company and the reason for it is there has to be a way to leverage that. So it's really cool to see how far you guys have gone. It's also really fun for me to put you in the hot seat and, and put you on the other side of this coin after all the years that we've worked together. So This is fun for me too, to kind of throw it back on you and make you answer all the questions. So pleasure for me. Yeah,
exactly. Well, I'm enjoying not driving, pun intended, for a change.
So I think kind of, can you help paint the picture a little bit? So I know you guys started really, FedEx was, this is how it started. We were FedEx contractors. We saw those needs naturally and trying to correct it in our own business and for contractors across the country. So how did that evolve over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. So, starting in the FedEx space, of course, we were working with that network of small contractors. And, definitely it was already on my radar that there were other small business operators that probably weren't considering this. And then actually not long after that, So RBC, who ran our FedEx operation, and my husband and I's company came from a landscaping background. And so he was like, listen, this FedEx thing has been fun, but I really want to run a different kind of business. And I would really like to keep working for you guys. So can we start a lawn care business? And my husband was like, I guess, and it was an interesting kind of thing for him. So RBC started a lawn care company that was our business. And so my husband ends up from overnight from FedEx to kind of in this lawn care world. And I'm like, well, you guys should use our fuel card. And that got me thinking, well, I guess other operators are definitely probably facing this same thing. And we buy a ton of fuel through that business and didn't have any systems, didn't have any tracking, and my radar from the FedEx world obviously went up, and I'm like, well, now wait a minute, is everybody using a fuel card? Because we need to be tracking miles per gallon and we need to be looking at inefficiencies. And so that was definitely a doorway and really kind of simultaneous to all of that. I've been working on a lot of route consultant projects and seen the expansion in those industries to the non-emergency medical, which is now one of our second largest segments inside of the fuel card, is supporting non-emergency medical operators. They have really similar problems, really similar challenges. Theft is a huge deal, actually even a bigger deal, I think, for them in that industry, just because they don't have a lot of the telematics systems and solutions in place that we do. So I mean, a lot of the NEMT operators I talk to, theft is one of their largest concerns, and they're losing 10, 20, 40 grand a year in theft and fraud, which is a huge that's just a devastating. You can either scale and add more management for that, or you can just
it's a whole person,
it's a whole
almost.
staff. Exactly. So that's been something that's really been a focus for us, is helping that community. We launched we're the official fuel card for the College Hunks franchise. So we launched and kind of landed in the moving industry, which is just another really similar space that's really been growing. We've also just started working even in municipalities. So local city governments that have fleets of, whether it's the Department of Transportation or even the police force, some different groups that, if you think about kind of inefficiency and waste and fraud and abuse, there's definitely some inefficiency, that we know exists in some of those industries. And so there's been so much, just places where we're finding that the things that we've learned in the FedEx space are really applicable. So.
Yeah, I mean, anyone that has vehicles, right?
Anybody that has vehicles, that's fuel. Right. Yeah.
I think, though, at a high level, before we get into some of these examples and kind of talk through some things there, can you just... Is it just discounts? Is that all a fuel card is? What does the fuel card really mean here? What are you providing?
So it's a great question. It's such a complex question. But so first and foremost, it's discounts, right? So when you go and pull up to the front of the gas station and you swipe your card, one of the challenges that we had was our drivers don't go to the same place every day. We're not and I guess this applies for residential as well, but in commercial, our territory, our area that we're covering can sometimes be pretty spacious in terms of, whole zip codes, whole districts, whatever. And so we're filling up in lots of different locations. And initially there were options to always go to, one specific brand, and you could get, 5 cents off of loyalty if you're going to this specific location all the time. But that doesn't really work for my business because I'm going a lot of different places and I need it to be convenient. So first goal was savings at the pump, and how do we get the most savings at the most locations? And that was a revolutionary way for us, where we were able to structure our card to basically let you fuel anywhere MasterCard is accepted, and you get a discount anywhere you fuel. So it's not like you have to fuel here to get a discount. And that was something that was pretty new and innovative to the space, but it was really important to us because that's what we needed in our business, to feel like we weren't wasting money when we're going anywhere.
Well, and it's got to be huge too. I mean, it's one of those things where discounts are great if they're getting them. Yeah. But if you've got drivers that, there's a certain gas station they always like to go to, or they hate the one gas station that you get discounts at, then they're not going to use it. And you can coach them all day, but at a certain point, they're just not going to use the card like you want them to. So if you take the choice away and just make it works everywhere, then that makes it easy.
That's exactly right. And so, and I mean, not to mention the hassle of here's 3 different cards to put in your wallet. It's hard enough to get a driver to keep up with one card.
That's the way I feel with my wife, and I can't use the right card. She gives me the 4 cards I'm supposed to use.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, no comment, but exactly. So that was the big kind of first challenge, is we want to be able to go anywhere and we want to be able to maximize savings. And then we can go negotiate on behalf of our customers and behalf of our network to get increased discounts. So we have a whole list of premier locations locations where our customers can get even more savings by choosing those preferred brands. And they're all over the place. I mean, it's your 7-Eleven, your Speedway, your Circle K, your Casey's, Racetrack, Raceway. I'll get in trouble if I list them all and don't list them all, but it's, there's a lot of different locations that you can. And so that was definitely kind of the first objective, was that kind of savings. But there's so much so many other things that we can focus on. And so one of the things we've launched is, from the technology side, making sure that we have a really great user-friendly dashboard that makes it, from a time-saving perspective, where operators can go and see their real-time transactions, see the cards they have in the field, really easily manage the day-to-day, the driver PIN numbers. I can't tell you how many times in a day, and I remember this from the FedEx world, we'd have a BC, or even, my husband drive an hour to a gas station to put in a driver's PIN number because he kept getting it wrong and was like, I can't get fuel, I can't go anywhere. And so we're like driving out there, and I'm like, there's got to be a better way. So with our dashboard, we've got it set up where the contractor can literally see right there the declined transaction, the error code it through, what was input in terms of like the PIN number, and they can just be like, Tommy, your fat finger in it. It's a 5, not a 4. And so really quickly we can solve problems like that. So that is a big help, and that's if they don't just call in, and more likely they just call Devin or Kenny or David and say, hey, I can't get this PIN number to work. What's happening? But either of those options, are big time savers. And then really, our team is very customer focused. We're all, from the industry and have lived in these spaces and kind of dealt with small businesses historically. And so we can really come alongside the customers and look for other ways to save. So again, it's not just discounts at the pump. It's behavioral, so we can do an analysis of the customer's business and help them get in there and say, look, you've got guys that are going and they're purchasing the premium fuel, which they don't need to, but they're doing it because they get more rewards points on their personal rewards card if they spend more. So they're literally spending more on purpose, and you don't need to do that. So we can go in and analyze and help them, find those types of inefficiencies. And then obviously we can monitor for things like fraud and theft and help increase savings that way, which can be material. And then, our program is also kind of backed by a purchasing alliance. So it's not even just fuel. I mean, we're about to launch a new tire program that is going to help contractors save on tires. So it's more than just, a discount at the pump for sure. But there's so many other pieces that we're looking to create a holistic fuel strategy for customers.
Yeah, and I think that's what's important, is that it is an expense, and it's a big expense. So people are just looking for dollars and cents to save, and that's part of it. But I do think when it is such a big expense, and when it does end up touching a bunch of different parts of your business, there needs to be a strategy around it, and you have to think about it. It can't just be something you look at every once in a while and say, oh, that looks about right. Yeah. And I think people realize that it's a big expense, but I would guess it's one of those that people forget about often and just kind of assume it's correct. And I'm sure that's something you guys deal with a lot, where when you're talking with customers, a lot of people will just assume that it's fine. So can you just kind of give some scenarios there of when they're wrong? This is a great
call out that you're making here. And it's so pointed for the things that we deal with, because when it comes to the piece that we're talking about, and more than just the savings, we see a variety of different kind of breeds of small business owner, if you will, right? So I've seen the contractor that literally is so in tune with trying to save money that the very best solution that they can come up with is they go every morning to a gas station at 6 a.m. and they stand there with a fuel card and they fill up all of their vehicles for the day and they send it out. You can't delegate it to an employee, because again, that's how you end up in this situation. Or I think 64% of employees in America will report that some form of theft, fraud, or abuse from their company. So it's like 64%, that's a big number. Yeah. So it's not something you can delegate. So I've seen that kind of breed of contractor that's like, this is the way that I can solve this, but the trade-off there, and yes, you maybe save $40,000 a year in theft and fraud, but that's, $40,000 the price of your time there, right?
Correct.
And so then, you have kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, which is the contractors that you're talking about that are like, hey, I have tremendous faith in the system and in humans, and here's, my own personal Amex cards, right? Which, I say that jokingly, but it's because that's how we started in our original operations, was with 100 personal Amex cards spread out over 5 states, just, with people we didn't even know, hoping that they were going to do the right thing. And that was when we had about 70 grand a year of annual theft and fraud. But, you have that spectrum that basically are just kind of trusting and, everything in between. And so that's really where we felt like the fuel card could come to the table and say, look, there is a better way. There's a way that gives you your time back because all the systems are centralized through the technology and through the resources. But you're not just kind of hoping and throwing caution to the wind, right? To see what happens. So having that centralized strategy, it was really the biggest driver for what we were trying to achieve. Does that answer your question?
It does, yeah. And I mean, and it's one of those things where, yes, in a perfect world, if you could directly fill up and monitor every single truck, maybe that's the best system. But maybe that works at 5 trucks, maybe it works at 10.
Yeah,
at
it's
15,
scale at some point.
15? Can I do 30? And so it does start to add up. But like in theory, what this allows you to do is to have that level of granularity and inspection on every vehicle and every transaction without having to be there.
Yes.
And so, I think you pointed out a few different things that your team helps, look at and analyze. So are there any things that you've seen where somebody comes in and they think they're doing it right, they get set up on your system, and then find out there are some pretty significant challenges that have been illuminated or that your team has helped kind of resolve and change for them?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. So that's a pretty regular occurrence for us, that we'll have a customer come in and, like I said, we do the kind of that free fuel analysis. We'll do now a new free theft analysis where we'll just comb through all of their data and basically look for issues. And we find it all the time where it's like, hey, here's, an extra $2,000 a year, 10 grand a year, sometimes 20 grand a year that you can be saving if you can just modify a behavior this way. And, I'll say this too. Another thing is, you talk about the team. This is a really important part for us. It's always been a core kind of fundamental pillar of how, we like to operate businesses. I like to operate businesses, is with that service focus first, and having really knowledgeable account managers that are actually working and interacting with the customers, because it's one thing, to have the data and to have, and in the fuel card space, I mean, there are some really outdated data and technology systems, some just like clunky, like, yes, all the information is there at your fingertips, but trying to decipher that is like, ugh, I mean, I would put it on the equivalent of having to stand there at 6 a.m. and physically, sitting there going through the spreadsheets, like, what do I do with all this data? So that was really important to us to, one, create a really clean, easy interface that's like, it looks like an iPhone, where you're like, there's my drivers, there's my transactions, like, here's my report, this is what I want to see. But having that extra element of human interaction, so like, I'll not forget this, when we were launching the fuel cards in our like lawn care business, right, with my husband. So I get him all set up with the fuel cards, and he starts talking about, okay, well, what if there's like a driver or PIN number issue, and like if I need to figure this out, like, can I just call Devin because you're my wife, and he'll just take my phone calls and he'll help me like do what I need to do so that I don't have to like figure it all out, because sometimes I'm too busy. And I'm like, babe, that's the beautiful part. Like, it's not because I'm your wife that you can call Devin. All of my customers can call Devin or, David or Kenny, whoever their account manager is. It's having that like real human on the other end of the phone that's just like, I can see what's going on. Let me get this for you. That when you're running a business, you don't have the time to, sit on hold or go dig in and, figure those things out. You just want to call somebody or text somebody and have it be somebody who knows you and knows your systems and can kind of give you that quick responsive solution. And that was really important to us with the team. And I think it does make such a difference. And so, yes, we're all the time really getting involved in the business. David, one of our account managers, is like the king of diving in on a business and being like if your drivers would just go across the street to this location, you will save an extra $5,000 this year. And the contractor's like, what?
Yeah.
Or like we had a contractor call in a couple weeks ago that they were using all Amex cards. This was a big contractor, like 80 trucks on the road. And they were using all Amex cards, and Amex like discovered, I guess, that they were using it for business purposes and just shut them off on a Friday, right?
Yeah.
And so, it was little less than a week before we had like cards in hand and could like, but we had to jump through hoops and like pivot stuff around to get that many, dispatched and ready to go. So again, it's just having that relatable person on the other end that has lived those frustrations that, is like, we wake up every day and look at our processes and our systems and say, how can we make it less frustrating?
Yeah.
How can we make it less complex and make it simpler for the customer?
So if you're, let's say you're talking to somebody who's using Amex or isn't using your fuel card, what are the top 2 or 3 things when you think about the mistakes or the kind of the blind spots that a lot of people have? Just so, and maybe even with those, what's the first thing that you would kind of recommend for them to start improving that strategy today? Yeah.
So, first and foremost, if you don't have a card that gives you security controls, that's basically the number one thing that is amiss there. And so you want to be able to limit, the amount of daily spend. A really big one is you want to be able to limit whether the drivers can purchase in store versus just at the pump. So, some of the most typical kind of crazy fraud things that we see involve going into the store. So it's obviously, when a driver goes in and they say, hey, I want to put 30 on that, but I also want this Gatorade and I want this, these chips. And, it's like so frustrating because sometimes it's like, if they would just ask, I would probably buy them the Gatorade and the chips, but it's the concept there. And so that is a really common one is happening, but there's creative stuff that happens that if you don't have those kind of systems in place and card controls, there's crazy things. Like we've had drivers who this is like probably one of the most extreme ones that happened to us in our patent operations. So we had an assistant manager that he literally personally stole $40,000 from us, and it probably would have been more if he hadn't gotten a little greedy with it. It was like the most undetectable way imaginable. So he would go in to the cash register and he would, put like $100 on pump 8 or whatever. He would go out to the pump and he would fill it with $80 and he would go back in and say, hey, can I get $20 cash back? Cash back. Yeah. And the cashiers aren't allowed to do that, right? Oh, okay. So then what he would do is he'd be like, I'll give you 5 if you give me 15 back. So he's like bringing them in on it. Yeah. And, he pulled this off for months and months and months because it was just so hard to detect that tiny little incremental difference. Then finally, he like got a little more confident, a little more brazen with this. It was like multiple transactions a day. And like, the amounts like kept growing before we finally caught that. But
it's one of those where it's like, I wish you would have put your creative genius towards the business a little bit. And
right.
we could
like,
have done something
yeah,
together.
You're like in leadership, right? Yeah. Like, is this what, so that's a really big one is you need to have those card controls. I even know of another contractor who had a BC put a $5,000 deposit on a car. Because he was just using a personal Amex and he's just like, swipe, like I'm buying a car. And that was it, and it's so hard to recover those things, right? You can press charges and it's like, also a lot of contractors don't know this, but like every $500 that you steal is a felony count. Oh, wow. So you can like rack up some felonies, but there's still not a lot of recourse. There's really not a good way for the contractor to ever recover that. The money's gone, Yeah. So that's the number one thing is having, those card controls, having, PIN numbers, having like vehicle cards where you can track it because, you're still going to have some instances where, drivers will figure out some way to beat the system, but you want to be able to shut it down really quickly to control that. So that's just the number one.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about that amount of money that you can lose and not have any, not one, you might not even realize it for a year. And 2, once you find it, what do you do?
That's
So,
exactly.
yeah.
So that's the number one. The other, like, again, kind of the number two for us is it's more just behaviorally oriented in terms of making the right maximum savings choices. So that in terms of just what has the biggest impact on the bottom line. So it's choosing for us the premier locations, where the difference is, 10 cents per gallon off versus, a penny and a half or, whatever it is. It's the rates are always changing, but that's a huge difference in savings. And again, it's sometimes just by going across the street.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. And then again, the other really kind of big one is watching for that premier fuel versus just the regular or premium versus the regular unleaded. That just makes a big difference, and it's really not necessary, and they're doing it to get those rewards points.
Yeah.
So those are some of the really big ones, but there's so many different so many different ways.
Is it something that you find, do you guys advise them at all on how to incentivize those behaviors or going to the right stations? Like, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah. Well, actually, this is a new thing that we're about to launch. So you're getting a little sneak peek of this, but I'm really excited about this. So our app feature is about to launch for the fuel card. And what I love about the new app is from the driver profile, it's really simple. There's not a lot in there, but they can see the things they really want to be able to see. They can not see the things that you don't want them to see. But their main screen is a mapping feature that will show them just the locations in their vicinity that have the best rates. And it has the actual pull from the Opus fuel prices. So they can see real time the cheapest fuel that they can possibly get in and around. And so they've also got a little icon that's going to basically track their missed savings. Oh. And then as the manager, the BC, the owner, you've got really clear trackers of missed savings opportunities by driver. And so it makes it a very coachable conversation, and it really puts it in their face that it's like, you looked at this, you had the options in front of you, and you chose to do this to me. Why would you do this?
Yeah, so you can coach them on it, but it's also, I'd imagine a lot or cultures, you can make a game out of it of who's the best, who's saving the most, or who's missing the most, and then you can have any number of either prizes or something around it. That's cool to be able to, because that's what I would do. Is say, okay, well, this guy's lost $10 this week alone. Yeah. Versus the others. That's the game that I would play. So,
and it is, and it's like, hey, you can give a $20 gift card as a reward, but it's like, it's the $20 that was probably going to get stolen from you. And then you're like, hey, you don't commit a felony, I don't get it stolen, and I'll give it back to you in an incentive because I'm saving way more on, all of the other rebates. Even if you did that, I don't know what it'd be like. Even if you did it every week, a $20 gift card for whoever saved the most, I think our average customer saves $6,800 a year on just the fuel savings, just the discounts. So, you could do that and still you're coming out way better. You're incentivizing the team and creating that culture. And it's just it's like found money at that point. So
and all kinds of benefits around people moving in the right direction, thinking about the business productively as opposed to just negatively. Yeah, so there's lots of benefits I'm sure you could see there. So I think all of that makes sense. I think regardless of if they're using the RCPA fuel card or any fuel card, I think what we most want people to really be thinking through is these are the things that are affecting every logistics business. If I don't have a solve for that, I got to figure that out today. So let's just kind of walk through the scenario. If somebody is starting with you all, what does it look like? Let's say they have 15 trucks. Is that 3-month process? What are we talking about?
Oh gosh, no. Yes, thankfully no. It can be because it's really how quickly we get the information that we need. But most of the time, it's a fully online application, so it's a really easy just input your information, and it does it all. Conceivably you could do it without ever talking to our team, but that's very rare. And obviously we're there if anybody wants to talk to us, but. Yep, you just fill out the application, and then once you get an approval, they'll come back with a little bit of onboarding to make sure we set up the right vehicles, the right cards, the right driver information, the right PIN numbers for everybody. And again, our team really kind of will hold your hand and make that as automated of an experience as you want, or as hey, I'm on the phone with you and I can talk you through this. I love that I'm still doing it like this kind of phone. I can't really shake that habit.
Those don't even exist anymore. I
know. I can't
like
shake it.
Get a razor. I think they still make those.
Yeah. So our team can really talk them through and help them get set up. And, I mean, it's about a week if everything goes really smooth. Like you can have cards in hand in a week if you really do everything that needs to happen. But I mean, some people will definitely turn that week into, into months, but it's okay. We're here. We're along for that. And, and that's one of the other things too, I think that's been something we've seen from the space is, not wanting to change is sometimes a real challenge. Again, I like that contractor that called me in a pinch because all their cards got shut off. It's like, we had been talking about it, but he's like, oh, I just don't want to, deal with all the change. Everybody knows what they're doing. It's so easy. But it's like, I would have way rather you not call me in a pinch and say that you had literally a week to get, cards in hand. But it's just it's the missed opportunity. It's the missed savings. And so we would love for everyone to get started sooner rather than later. I mean, peak season is a really big time too you've got a lot of brand new drivers, a lot of new faces, inexperienced people. A lot of our theft was from, drivers that would come in, work for a day and take a fuel card home and like take their family on vacation before we could figure out what was going on, before we had really good, security controls. And so it's a good time to get going and stop that bleed. But yeah, it's about a week-long process.
Yeah, and sometimes with new drivers, it's not even necessarily a malicious thing or that they're being sneaky. Sometimes they just don't even realize that what they're doing they can't do. So there's part of that too, of just make sure it's all in place so that you protect the driver from themselves.
Yes, you like encourage them to make good decisions and then try to eliminate the crazy ones.
Yeah, and do they pay per card? Is that how it works? Like if you have somebody signing up?
No, I love to talk about this too. Thank you for asking me about this. That was another really important thing for me as a small business owner is like, I hate going through financials and being like, what is this little fee? And like, what is this for? And what did we pay $20 and $30 here? And it's like one of the most frustrating things. I want it to just be clean and all in, and I can look at the P&L for the week and say, this is what happened and move on. And so our card is no monthly fees, no transaction fees, no per card fees, no activation fees, no application fees, no like literally whatever you can think of, like if you pay late, I think that the finance team charges you a late payment fee, but that is it. And that was something that was really important to me just because I've actually seen the numbers and run the numbers on this in the past too, that a lot of the other programs out there like bury a lot of fees in the process. And so you can save $3,000 and pay $1,000 back in fees. And it starts to get a little bit of like monopoly money at some point. That's like, what are we really doing? And so no, you do not have to deal with any of that to get started. And that was very important to me in crafting the program.
Yeah, I think that sounds nice.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm like,
I mean, credit card fees and fees on cards like that in general are just always the sneaky killer. And so that, especially if we're talking at scale, like if you're talking about fees per card like that, those add up quickly, like you're saying. So
yeah, it is. And it's like, again, I've had those conversations too, where they're like, oh, but I just love my rewards points. And it's like, we can sit and do the math. And it's like, you are losing money, even though it feels really fun, like the way what you're paying over here in fees, and then the theft and the fraud risk. And then, you add on top of it the lack of the discount that you're getting and the lack of the visibility before you even talk about the time that, gets lost. It's just like, I would love to have that conversation with anyone if they want to like really sit down and look at it. Like we really feel confident that we have a competitive savings proposition. And so I would love to have that conversation anytime somebody wants to.
And I'm sure that's where a lot of people are. If they're not using your card right now, if they're at the point where they're saying, maybe this is something I should think more about. Yeah. So if they reach out through the RCPA website.
Yep. Info at rcpasave.com.
Is that a conversation they can have from the beginning?
Absolutely. Okay. It's just like, I mean, like we do a free fuel analysis for any customer, like whether they're existing customers or they're a prospective customer. So you can bring us whatever you're currently doing, and we will comb through it, and we will look for theft. We will look for inefficiency, and that it depends on the solution that you're using, how great we can do, because some solutions like a standard credit card, I can't even see what type of fuel they bought. So it's just like fuel. It's just Casey's, So in those scenarios, it definitely helps if you're using our fuel card, everything is a lot easier for us to find opportunities for you to save. But I can work with anything to try to help move you in the right direction and just add that to the bottom line.
Yeah. And I think that all points back to what we talked about from the beginning, which is you can look at any card and you should be using, let's start there. You should be using some kind of fuel card in this space no matter what. Tell people that all the time. Rule number one, use something.
Use something, please.
But I think you can compare and contrast and just look at discounts. But at the end of the day, I think one of the most important things is that you find a partner who will help you develop an actual strategy, help you use the technology and the features to help you make better decisions for your business in a bunch of different ways. And I think what you're talking about here, that first conversation really points back to that it is a strategy first conversation, and they'll find that the discounts will be great, but that's only part and parcel of everything that you guys offer.
Exactly. Yeah. Can I use that? That was really good. That's right. Yeah. It comes from the place of experience and living the frustrations and, wanting to create something that really is a solve for FedEx contractors, but for all of these other small business owners too, in the NEMT space. And again, like even the cities or lawn care, HVAC, like we've had so many opportunities to work with other small businesses that are saying, wow, I had never even looked at this. I had never even really thought about my fuel spend, even though it's 13% of my revenue, right. And I had never considered ways to get it back.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Annalee. I have one last question for you, because I ask it for everyone who comes on the show. So for all listeners, if you have either a favorite book or favorite movie that you have read or watched recently, what would you recommend? You can do both. You can do either. You got to do one at least.
Oh, man. Okay, that's so good. I'm normally such a movie person, but I've been on a book kick lately. This is like maybe the weirdest choice. I don't know, but this has been really helpful for me. So I'm reading this book. I feel like I need to give some backstory. So like 7 years ago, I went to a Tony Robbins thing. And they were talking, he does all the ha and makes you stretch and everything. And there was this guy talking about the Egoscue method. Okay. So it's about your body positioning.
Okay.
So I've been having some lower back pain that's carting kids around all the time and I'm running all over the place, and so I've been having this back pain. So I read this book called Pain Free. Is actually the most recent book I finished, so I'm telling you about this one. But it's a whole book about your skeleton and making sure that your ankles and your knees and your hips and your shoulders are in a line and in perfect balance, and it's really technical, but not, it's dumbed down technical, which I really appreciated.
Do you find yourself being hyper aware of everything all the time?
I do now. When I'm sitting, I'm where is my ankle in relation to my knee? But it has really been helping.
Okay, that's
and
what I was
so
Did it work?
And it gives you a handful of exercises for wherever your body pain. And the whole concept is in terms of musculoskeletal pain, if you were perfectly balanced, you would have no pain and you could do everything you wanted to do indefinitely, and you wouldn't get arthritis or any of these things. And so I'm I don't know if I'm there, but I'm definitely working on it, and it sounds lovely. So that's my latest read.
And it's called Pain Free?
It's called Pain Free.
Okay. Yep. Well, that's the recommendation. So Annalee, whether it's providing fuel strategy or a pain-free life.
That's right.
RCPA is where you come.
Exactly. We were your pain-free solution for all things fuel and skeleton.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure.
It was my pleasure. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Awesome.